The pounding of Vance's boots against metal streets disappeared beneath blaring alarms and heavy thuds of mercenary enforcers in pursuit. His lungs burned as he weaved through the industrial sprawl of Nexus Station's lower levels, dodging startled vendors and loose cargo. These weren't the usual lazy station security, this was a trained hunter unit. Vance's original escape plan, double back to docking bay, slip onto his ship, burn thrusters, was shot. They were pushing him away from his vessel, deeper into the station's labyrinth of alleyways and abandoned storage yards. He yanked a stolen comlink from his belt, flipping through frequencies. Sector D sealed. Confirm visual on target. Vance swore. They had a perimeter. If he didn't break their line now, he'd be boxed in. A narrow maintenance tunnel between warehouses caught his eye, dark, rusted, reeking of decay. Perfect. He sprinted through, emerging into an old cargo yard where shipping containers stacked haphazardly. No movement, no lights. Vance picked the closest container with a gap in its door and slipped inside, pulling it shut just enough to blend into shadows. Spread out, barked an enforcer outside. He's here somewhere. Vance controlled his breathing, back pressed against cold metal. Then he heard it, chains rattling, slow and deliberate. He wasn't alone. Scanning the darkness, he made out a small figure huddled in the container's corner. She was bound, shackles at wrists and ankles, dull in the dim light. Her skin was a deep azure blue with iridescent markings trailing along visible skin, pulsing faintly like a weakened heartbeat. Silver-white hair fell in tangles over slender shoulders. But it was her eyes that stopped him, luminous violet, reflecting the sliver of light between them. She wasn't pleading or crying. Just waiting, with the empty stare of someone who'd given up on rescue. Not my problem, Vance muttered to himself. He had his own mess. His stolen comlink crackled. 5 minutes until drone sweep. If he left her, she was dead, or worse, back to whatever hell she'd been pulled from. Alien trafficking was booming business on stations like this. Damn it. He crouched, keeping hands where she could see them. I'm not here to hurt you, he whispered. I'm getting you out. She didn't react at first. Then her fingers twitched against the shackles, not quite trust, but not refusal. Vance pulled his plasma cutter from his belt. Hold still. The first shackle broke with a hiss. Then the second, third, last, all clattering against the metal floor. For a moment, she just stared at her freed wrists as if unsure whether to believe it. He offered his hand. She hesitated, then with the smallest movement, her cold fingers ghosted against his, a silent choice. Time to move, he murmured, pushing open the container door. Stay close. She nodded once as they stepped into open air. Outside, voices approached from the west end of the yard. This way, Vance pulled her toward a maintenance shaft. Can you climb? The alien woman flexed her hands, nodding again. Her legs trembled but held as they reached the shaft's entrance. Name's Vance, he whispered as he worked the rusted access panel open. Nilara, she replied, voice soft but clear, surprising him. Of House Varen. He blinked. You speak common? Enough. Her eyes darted nervously to the approaching voices. The panel gave way. Ladies first, Vance gestured to the dark shaft. 20 meters up, then right at the junction. As Nilara climbed, Vance heard enforcers enter the container yard. No time for subtlety now. He followed her into the shaft, pulling the panel closed behind them just as flashlight beams swept across the yard. They climbed in silence, the only sound their labored breathing. At the junction, they paused. My ship's in Bay 47, Vance whispered. If we can reach the maintenance corridors behind the commercial sector, we might make it. They will have watchers, Nilara's voice was stronger now. At your vessel. Got a better idea? She hesitated. The merchant quarter. Many bodies, many species. We blend. Smart. Merchant quarter it is. As they navigated the station's forgotten pathways, Vance wondered what madness had possessed him to rescue an alien prisoner. Smuggling contraband was his business, not saving damsels in distress. Yet something in those violet eyes had reached him. Something he recognized. What he didn't know was how this impulse would change his life forever. Vance's ship, the Stardrift, broke atmosphere as dawn touched the horizon of Rylex 9, a forgotten outpost planet on the edge of controlled space. The battered freighter descended toward a small compound nestled between rocky cliffs and dense forest. "Home sweet home," Vance muttered, engaging landing protocols. Beside him, Nalara watched silently, her luminous eyes taking in everything. 3 days had passed since their escape from Nexus Station. 3 days of tense hyperspace jumps, avoiding patrol routes, and changing course repeatedly to shake potential pursuers. Nalara had spent most of that time recovering in the small med bay, accepting food and water but saying little. The ship settled with a groan onto the landing pad. Vance powered down systems, then turned to his unexpected passenger. "This is my safe house. Not fancy, but secure. We should be able to lay low here while we figure out next steps." Nalara nodded. "Why help me?" she asked suddenly, her voice still rough from disuse. Vance paused, genuinely unsure himself. Right place, wrong time? Or maybe I just hate seeing anyone in chains. He shrugged. "Let's get inside." The compound was simple but functional: living quarters, storage, comm center, and a small garden dome for fresh food. Solar panels and wind turbines provided power, and an underground spring supplied water. As night fell, Vance prepared a simple meal while Nalara explored the living space, touching objects with curious fingers. She stopped at a shelf displaying trinkets from different worlds, small mementos of Vance's travels. "You are a smuggler?" she asked, examining a tiny carved figurine. "I prefer independent logistics specialist," Vance replied with a half-smile. "But yes. Whatever pays, as long as it doesn't involve trafficking sentience." Nalara's markings pulsed brighter for a moment. "Honorable, for a criminal. Even thieves have standards." Vance set down 2 bowls of stew. "Hungry?" Over dinner, Nalara began to open up. Her species, the Veilorians, came from a distant system. She had been on a diplomatic mission when her ship was attacked by raiders. Her guards were killed, and she was drugged, then sold to the highest bidder. "They were taking me to a private collector," she explained, her voice hardening. "Someone who wanted an exotic companion." Vance's hands tightened around his bowl. "That's not going to happen now." "No," she agreed, meeting his eyes. "Because of you." Something passed between them in that moment, an understanding, a connection neither expected. Later that night, Vance checked the compound's security systems, ensuring their location remained hidden. When he returned to the living area, he found Nalara standing by the large window, staring at the stars. "Your world is out there?" he asked. "Far beyond what you can see," she replied. "In a system with twin suns and 3 moons. Sounds beautiful." "It is." Her markings dimmed. "But I may never see it again." Vance stepped closer. "We'll figure something out. I have contacts, not all reputable, but useful." Nalara turned to him, studying his face. "Why risk more for me? You've already done enough." "Maybe I'm not done yet," Vance replied, surprising himself with his own certainty. Days turned to weeks. Nalara's strength returned fully, revealing her natural grace and quiet dignity. She learned the compound systems quickly, helping with repairs and garden work. Her presence filled the usually empty spaces with a strange harmony Vance hadn't realized was missing. At night, they talked for hours. Vance shared stories of growing up in space stations, joining freight crews, and eventually striking out on his own. Nilara spoke of Valorian customs, their connection to cosmic energies, and her position as a daughter of one of the 7 ruling houses. "You're practically royalty?" Vance asked, stunned. "My status matters little here," she said simply. One evening, a proximity alert sounded. Vance rushed to the monitors, Nilara close behind. 2 ships, he growled, checking readings. Unregistered. Flying dark. Nilara's markings flashed anxiously. "They've found us." "How?" Vance checked the scanner again. "Nobody knows about this place except," realization hit him. "Reed. That bastard sold us out. What do we do?" Nilara's voice remained calm despite her glowing patterns betraying her fear. Vance's mind raced through options. "We can't outrun them in the stardrift if they're already this close." He moved quickly to a hidden panel in the wall, revealing a cache of weapons. "But I'm not going down without a fight, and I'm certainly not letting them take you." Nilara touched his arm, her fingers cool against his skin. "There is another way. Something I haven't told you." Her markings began to pulse with increasing intensity. "But you'll have to trust me completely." Vance looked from the approaching ships back to Nilara's determined face. Whatever was coming, they would face it together. "My people can channel energy," Nilara explained, her markings pulsing brighter. "Those of royal blood possess stronger abilities." Vance watched as the blue patterns across her skin intensified. "What exactly can you do?" "Create disruption fields. Enough to mask our heat signatures and disable tracking systems temporarily." The proximity alert blared louder. The ships would reach them within minutes. "Do it," Vance decided, grabbing essential supplies and weapons. Nilara closed her eyes, her entire body illuminating with blue-white energy. She raised her hands, and waves of pulsing light expanded outward. The compound's electronics flickered, then stabilized. "That should blind their scanners for about 30 minutes, she gasped, clearly drained. "But they'll still land and search manually." Vance helped her toward the compound's rear exit. "There's an old mining tunnel through the cliffs. If we can reach it before they spread out." They slipped into the night, staying low among the rocks. Behind them, the whine of engines grew louder as the pursuit ships landed. "House Varen," Vance whispered as they navigated the treacherous terrain. "You're not just any royal, are you?" "I am third daughter to the High Council chair," Nilara admitted. "My abduction was politically motivated. Those aren't just black market slavers, they're working for someone who wants leverage against my family." They reached the tunnel entrance just as voices echoed from the compound. Inside, Vance activated a small light, revealing narrow passages stretching deep into the cliff face. "These connect to an abandoned settlement on the other side," he explained. "There's an old emergency shuttle there. Not much, but it'll get us off-world." As they moved deeper into the tunnels, Nilara stumbled, still weakened from using her abilities. Vance caught her, their faces suddenly close. "I should have told you sooner," she whispered. "About who I am. What's at stake?" "Would have been nice to know I was harboring alien royalty," Vance said with a wry smile. "But it wouldn't have changed anything." Her eyes searched his. "Why?" Before he could answer, the sound of footsteps echoed from behind. Their pursuers had found the tunnel. "Run now, talk later," Vance urged, taking her hand. They raced through the winding passages, the sounds of pursuit growing closer. At a junction, Vance stopped abruptly. "This way leads to the settlement, but they'll expect that." He gestured to a narrower, rougher tunnel. "This one's trickier but comes out near the same place. Might lose them." Nilara nodded, trusting his judgment. The side passage was tight, requiring them to squeeze through in places. Eventually, it opened into a larger cavern with an underground stream. "We follow the water," Vance whispered. "It comes out near the settlement." As they waded through the shallow stream, Nilara spoke softly. "If we escape, my family has resources. We could arrange protection, maybe even." A shot from behind struck the wall, sending rock fragments flying. Vance pulled Nilara down behind a boulder. "5 of them," he hissed, peering carefully around their cover. "Armed with pulse rifles." "I can try another disruption," Nilara offered, though her markings were still dim from her earlier effort. "Save your strength." Vance unholstered his blaster. "We just need to delay them." He fired several shots at the cavern ceiling ere the pursuers were gathered. The fragile rock cracked, then collapsed, sending a shower of debris that blocked the passage. "That won't hold them long," Vance said, helping Nilara up. "Let's move." They followed the stream until moonlight appeared ahead, the tunnel exit. Emerging on the hillside, they saw lights of the abandoned settlement below. Almost there, Vance encouraged, but Nilara suddenly gripped his arm. "Vance," she whispered, pointing to movement near the settlement. They had a third ship. More armed figures were visible, surrounding the old landing pad where the emergency shuttle waited. "We're trapped between them," Nilara realized, her voice steady despite everything. Vance surveyed their surroundings, mind racing. "Not yet, we're not. I didn't survive this long without contingencies." He pulled a small device from his pocket, input a code, and grinned as lights suddenly flashed at his compound in the distance. "Remote detonation of my fuel reserves," he explained as the horizon lit up with an explosion. "That'll draw some of them back." Sure enough, the figures near the settlement began moving, several breaking off toward the burning compound. "It's now or never," Vance said. "Ready for one final sprint?" Nilara's markings brightened with renewed determination. "Lead the way." As they prepared to make their move, Nilara caught Vance's hand. "Whatever happens, thank you. For everything." Their eyes locked, an unspoken connection deepening between them. Then they ran toward the settlement, toward escape, and toward whatever future awaited them beyond this forgotten outpost. The emergency shuttle whined in protest as Vance pushed its aging engines beyond safe limits. They'd barely escaped, 2 pursuers nearly catching them at the landing pad before Nilara had stunned them with a burst of energy that left her slumped in the co-pilot seat. "Where are we going?" she asked, watching stars streak past the viewport. "I know someone in the Helion system. Old friend named Darius who runs a trading post on Verita Station. If anyone can help us disappear, it's him." Nilara's markings pulsed weakly. "Can he be trusted?" "Known him 15 years, Vance replied, though doubt crossed his face. "But given Reed's betrayal, let's say we'll be cautious." After a nerve-wracking journey, they approached Verita Station, a sprawling commercial hub built into a large asteroid. Vance transmitted coded identification that would mask their true registry. Darius greeted them at a private docking bay, a burly man with a cybernetic eye and scarred face who embraced Vance like a brother. "You look terrible," he laughed, then nodded respectfully to Nilara. "Your friend is welcome too." He led them through service corridors to a well-hidden apartment. "Stay here," he instructed. "I'll arrange new identities and transport." Once alone, Vance activated scanner jammers from his pack. "Just in case," he explained to Nilara. "You don't fully trust him," she observed. "I don't fully trust anyone these days." He paused. "Except maybe you." Nilara's markings brightened momentarily. She approached him, placing a hand on his chest. "I've never met anyone like you, Vance. My people would consider humans primitive, yet you possess courage and honor that many Veilorians lack." His hand covered hers. "High praise from royalty." "I'm not speaking as royalty," she whispered. Their moment was interrupted by Vance's scanner beeping. He checked it, face darkening. Communications spike. Darius just sent a high-priority encrypted message. He's betraying us? Maybe. Or maybe he's arranging our escape. Vance moved to the window. But I don't like coincidences. His caution proved warranted when, hours later, his perimeter alert vibrated. The scanner showed 6 armed figures approaching their location. Time to go, Vance said grimly. They slipped out through a maintenance hatch Vance had already identified. As they navigated the station's underbelly, Nilara suddenly pulled Vance into a shadowed alcove. Listen, she urged. If we're separated, there's something you should know. Her markings pulsed intensely. My people have ships patrolling the outer systems searching for me. If you can get a message to them. We're not getting separated, Vance interrupted firmly. But if we do, she insisted, find Captain Thorin of the Valorian Guard. Tell him the starlight still dances. He'll know I sent you. Vance nodded reluctantly. Let's focus on staying together first. They reached a commercial sector teeming with various species. As they wove through the crowd, Nilara suddenly froze, her eyes wide. What is it? Vance asked. Sentinels, she whispered. Elite trackers. They can sense Valorian energy signatures. 2 tall, gray-skinned beings were methodically scanning the crowd ahead. This way, Vance guided her toward a service entrance. They descended several levels, eventually reaching the station's docking ring. We need a ship, Vance muttered, surveying the options. I can help with that, said a familiar voice behind them. They turned to find Darius, alone and unarmed. You sold us out, Vance accused, raising his blaster. I had to appear to cooperate, Darius replied calmly. They threatened my family. Why should I believe you? Darius held out a data chip. Docking codes for Bay 17. Fast scout ship, fully fueled. Pre-programmed jump coordinates to a safe haven. Vance didn't lower his weapon. And why would you help us now? Because you saved my life at Kronos Belt, and Galen Voss never paid his debts. Darius's expression hardened. The Sentinels are 3 levels up, still searching. You have maybe 10 minutes. Vance hesitated, then took the chip. If this is another trap. It's not, Darius cut him off. Now go. And Vance, don't contact me again. For both our sakes. Minutes later, they reached Bay 17 where a sleek scout ship waited. The docking codes worked. As they prepared for launch, Nilara touched Vance's arm. Do you think he was telling the truth? We'll find out soon enough, Vance replied, initiating launch sequence. If these coordinates lead to a trap, at least we'll face it together. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them, fear, hope, and something deeper neither was ready to name. As the ship broke away from the station, Vance knew that whatever awaited them, his fate was now inexorably tied to hers. The coordinates led them to an uncharted moon in a remote system, barren landscape, thin atmosphere, but habitable. A small outpost nestled between rock formations appeared as they descended. Darius actually came through, Vance murmured, surprised. Who lives here? Nilara's markings pulsed with caution. Let's find out. They approached the outpost armed and alert. The door slid open before they reached it, revealing a tall, powerfully built woman with cybernetic enhancements. Commander Vance Riker, she stated. Been a while. Heard you were in trouble. Again. Lieutenant Tora, Vance relaxed slightly. Thought you were dead. Military intelligence likes it that way. Her eyes shifted to Nilara. Your companion? Nilara of House Varen, Nilara answered directly. And you are former Earth Alliance Special Forces. Tora raised an eyebrow. Observant. The implant configuration is distinctive. Inside, Tora explained how she'd left military service after uncovering corruption. Now she operated a network helping people disappear from powerful enemies. Darius contacted me yesterday. Valorian royalty, black market slavers, and political conspiracies? She shook her head. You never do anything small, Riker. Can you help us contact the Valorian fleet? Vance asked. Better. I already did. Tora activated a holodisplay showing a warship approaching the system. They'll arrive in 6 hours. Nilara's markings brightened with hope, but Vance tensed. Our pursuers won't just give up. They'll track us here. Counting on it, Tora smiled coldly. Time to stop running. Over the next hours, they prepared defenses and traps around the outpost. Nilara worked with Tora to establish secure communications with the approaching Valorian vessel, while Vance modified weapons and sensor arrays. During a quiet moment, Nilara found Vance on the outpost's observation deck. Soon I'll return to my people, she said softly. That's good, Vance replied, not meeting her eyes. You'll be safe. What will you do? What I always do. Find another cargo, another run. Nilara stepped closer. You could come with me. Before he could respond, alarms blared. 3 ships appeared on scanners, approaching fast. Showtime, Tora called, activating defense systems. The battle was swift and brutal. Tora's preparations gave them the advantage, disrupting the attackers' coordination. Vance and Tora held the perimeter while Nilara used her abilities to disable enemy tech. When the slavers breached the outpost, they faced coordinated resistance. Vance fought with the precision of someone who'd survived countless battles. Nilara's powers flashed brilliantly, disabling weapons and stunning attackers. The leader of the slavers, a scarred man with cold eyes, cornered Nilara. Do you know how much your family would pay for your return? He snarled, raising his weapon. A shot rang out. The man collapsed, revealing Vance behind him. They'd pay nothing, Vance said, lowering his blaster. Because she's going home free. When the Valorian warship arrived, they found the battle already won. Captain Thorin himself led the boarding party, kneeling before Nilara with profound respect. Your Highness, your family feared the worst. Rise, old friend, she smiled. I have quite a story to tell. As Valorian troops secured the area and detained surviving attackers, Nilara pulled Vance aside. My offer stands, she said. Come with me. To your world? As what? A human curiosity? Vance shook his head. As my chosen companion, she declared boldly. By Valorian law, one who saves royal blood earns the right of petition. I would grant you much more. Her markings pulsed in patterns he now recognized as affection. Vance hesitated, looking from the Valorian ship to the stars beyond. I'm not much for politics or royal courts, he admitted. Then we will find our own path, she promised. Between your world and mine. Ambassador, perhaps? We need more bridges between our peoples. Captain Thorin approached, offering a formal bow to Vance. The High Council will want to honor the one who saved the third daughter. Such a debt is not taken lightly. Later, aboard the Valorian ship, Vance watched his scout vessel being secured in the docking bay. Tora had declined to join them, preferring her independence, but promised to remain an ally. Nilara found him there, dressed now in royal attire that made her markings seem even more luminous. Having doubts? Just wondering what I'm getting myself into. She took his hand, her markings synchronizing with his pulse. Something new. Something neither of our worlds has seen before. Vance smiled, finally accepting what he'd known since that moment in the shipping container. Some rescues weren't just about saving others, sometimes they saved you too. Well, he said, squeezing her hand, I've always enjoyed exploring uncharted territory. As the Valorian ship prepared for departure, Vance Riker, smuggler, outlaw, and now perhaps diplomat, looked toward the future with something he hadn't felt in years: hope.